phased you? Has it made you a stronger person?
Yeah, I think it has. A lot of things have made me stronger this year, and that's one of them. The way our fans have been out there to me is one of the biggest things that's got me through everything. So I owe them a lot.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Southern Manx podcast. So it's episode 3, by the fans, for the fans. We've got so much to get through tonight, including a review of the Liverpool FA Cup win, a review of last night's debacle at home to Sheffield United, a preview to one of my favourite fixtures, Arsenal at home, and a roundup of all things United and some stories that have come from the Premier League this week. On today's show, we welcome back Orlando Carrera after a bout of the dreaded Rona. So first of all, how are you, pal?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Back, glad to be back. I'd say firing on all cylinders, but not quite. But yeah, glad to be back doing something interesting rather than just, on the old Rona.
Yeah, fair enough. Catch it, bin it, kill it.
Yes.
And then also, Mark Powell, how are you?
Good, yeah. 1 metre, Peter, please.
Yeah, fair enough. And apologies from Joe Perkins today. The podcast has become so popular that he's had to move house due to the amount of fans on his driveway. So we wish the move well, JP. So let's go straight into this then. Let's go into the weekend's fixture. It feels so far away now because of what happened last night. But we are in the next round of the FA Cup. Orlando, on your return, I'll throw the first question to you, pal. Thoughts on the lineup for the Liverpool victory? So obviously Dean Henderson replaced De Gea. Lindelof come back in.
Yeah.
Mason Greenwood kind of came out from the cold as we reverted back to the either 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1, depending on how you look at it. And Donny van der Beek made a guest appearance. It was nice for him to join in the fun. So yeah, your thoughts on the lineup? What worked and what didn't for you?
Well, I think it took quite a few people by surprise, the Lindelof inclusion. I think Bailly had done so well, and Lindelof's been quite hit and miss, not just this season, but over a number of seasons. I think the anticipation was for Bailly to get a start, which obviously didn't happen. Ollie fully vindicated in his selection as Lindelof played really, really well. A couple of really key blocks, didn't really put a foot wrong. So, if he could bring that form into his performances week in, week out, then you'd have a solid centre-back pairing, really. So with the Lindelof selection, it worked out really well. Wouldn't have been something I would have done and didn't seem the general consensus, but seemed to work. Henderson for a cup run, bit of a no-brainer, really, to give him some minutes. Sort of first time we're seeing, Van der Beek start from the beginning and in probably what is his most natural position I could see, in front of Pogba and McSauce. I didn't really feel like the balance worked really, which surprised me. I thought it would do, kind of a like for like with Bruno Fernandes, but it didn't really seem to flow really. That the balance just didn't really seem right in that area of the park. I don't know what it was, whether it was just an off day. I think normally when he's come on, he's done okay. He's been quite impactful, goals, assists, sort of late runs into the box. I think he's shown some signs, but didn't really capitalise on that really. I think the game overall, I'd say we were fairly comfortable by the end. I think, obviously Liverpool had spells, where they did well. Of course they would, they're a good side, but I did watch the game and felt far more comfortable than I did certainly with the fixture the previous week, and I think we were well worth our win in the end, to be honest.
Yeah, Van der Beek's a strange one. In fact, Mark put up a match ratings after the game, and Van der Beek was given a 6, which I thought was actually a grid of how many touches he had in the game. To me, he seemed lost. Out of the 4, would you say then Lindelof or perhaps Greenwood probably took their chance on the day?
I think Lindelof certainly did very well. You can't really argue with him coming back into the team based upon that. He would normally be a fixture in that back 4 as a pairing with Maguire, and I think based upon that, I can't really see him being dethroned from his position amongst the back 2 pairing under Ollie. Greenwood, took his goal very well, albeit a big shout in his ear from Robertson to try and put him off. So really, really pleased with that. I think he needs some run of games. he's probably the most natural finisher we have at the club. I think he needs to play more, and I think him being in the team and scoring hopefully will put a bit more pressure on Rashford and Martial to, bring their A game a bit more, because that might be something we talk about later on, but they kind of seem shooing really, those two, and I'm not always convinced that that's on merit currently based upon performances. But yeah, hopefully he can start to put pressure on those guys and really push for a starting berth.
Yeah, absolutely. You've probably done more tonight yourself, mate, than Martial did in 90 minutes last night. So, Mark, we'll throw it over to yourself then. Comparing the two Liverpool games, they came in quick succession. Where do you think this game was won from us, or was it more a case of Liverpool losing the game? How did you see the ebbs and flow of the 90 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, this game, because it felt different. It felt like there was less to lose. I think in the league at Anfield, Liverpool did not want to lose that game, and that with their defensive sort of changes that they had to make with Fabinho and Henderson in the first game at centre half, restricted their play quite a bit. That said, I thought at Anfield, like we said last week, they were great first half hour. Thiago run it, he faded, but they started well. They could have had a couple of goals. Firmino quite wasteful. So this game felt like, especially with no fans as well, for me it felt like it was a bit of let loose a little bit. Weird game, very, very weird game. Even at 1-0 down, you thought United still had a good chance to get something from it. Obviously then it went 1-1, then we took the lead, then pegged back again quite quickly after, and you felt, not quite sure which way this is going to go. I think Salah had a good chance for his hat-trick. And so, yeah, I thought that it could have really gone either way. And then we throw on Bruno, and he comes up with the goods late on, much like Ollie did in the fourth round all those years ago. So showed his class. I think brilliant when you watch that goal back. The impact of Maguire as well. I pointed out on Twitter. He stands. This is not by accident, that goal. He stands directly in the line of sight of the keeper, just off the wall. And for a big lad, as Bruno hits it, how quickly he ducks to get out of the way of it is quite remarkable. So I thought we, like I say, could have gone either way. And Pogba, I thought he was excellent. I think if you look at our goals, he plays a key part. Obviously, goal and assist for both the young lads in Greenwood and Rashford. Really happy with their output. Obviously, we did a poll after the game to find out our followers' man of the match, and they went with Shaw. Rightly deserved. I think he was again excellent. What I really liked about our play was particularly down that left-hand side, the overloads. I've been screaming out for Wan-Bissaka to do similar on the other side, and I think Shaw, probably rightly so, that he got that man of the match. He was a constant nuisance, constant threat. So yeah, we did well, counted on the break, took our chances when they came, and when you need a goal to get the winner in the latter stages, got quality to come off the bench. So yeah, really happy with that.
Yeah, it felt like there was just a little bit more pace to the game compared to the Anfield one the week prior. And I think you're right in what you said. It loosened up a little bit. You could see, rather than in the Anfield game where it was scratchy and we kind of had to really work for our chance to play the way we played, you could tell we kind of imposed our own way of playing on the game. And okay, that might lead to holes in the back line, which we'll probably talk about later. But when you take your chances, that's exciting football, and it was kind of edge of your seat stuff. So we're through. Liverpool are out. Other key teams or big teams still in the competition: Leicester, Spurs, City, who we thought almost might have treated themselves to a shock. Chelsea, I can't remember if I mentioned them, but we also saw Arsenal go out, and we'll talk more of Arsenal later. But for us in the next round, Orlando, West Ham at home. What's your thoughts? What's your feelings? Good draw. You're on mute, pal.
You're on mute.
I think we've been done a bit by the draw there again, haven't we? We don't seem to get the same kind of draw that City are afforded sort of year in, year out in the domestic cups. If we're going to win it, it's going to be done the hard way. And I think we had a similar run in the FA Cup last year where it seemed we managed to do really well in a tie and a round that was a difficult fixture, and it went again and again and again. But, that's the nature of cup competitions, really. Still fancy us at home against West Ham. Obviously, they've just done really well in the league, temporarily up to fourth, seem to be hitting a good run of form. I'm sure Moisey would like to get one over on us every time he comes back. So there's that obviously added spice to things. Is Jay Lings going to go to West Ham as well? If he is there going to be any kind of clause which would prevent him playing if it's a loan move or a permanent? That's also an interesting context to have a look at. But yeah, I do fancy us. I think, we've got reasonable strength in depth. I think the team that was changed for the Liverpool game still shows that we can compete with a few changes. I imagine it would be a similar number of changes. Wouldn't be wholesale changes. I think Ollie kind of feels, or hopefully should feel, that top four with this current momentum should be pretty cast iron secure, and that we should really be focusing on a cup. Obviously, we'd still like to compete for the Premier League, but I think perhaps focusing on the FA Cup as well as a top four finish is realistic, if not necessarily what we want to hear. But I think that's probably the most prudent way of attacking the rest of the season for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, on Jesse Lingard, I'm pretty sure he started in the third round against Watford, so that would cup tie him.
Okay.
You touched on Moisey there. He's done a good job, has he not? I know he's not the most popular character for us Man United fans, but just give us your thoughts on how well you think David Moyes has done at West Ham, because it's his second spell there, and he seems to have turned it round. It seems to be one of those clubs where it's helped them not having the fans, because the London Stadium, or is it the London? That's what they called it, the London Stadium, Olympic Stadium. It seems to me more sort of hell bent on talking about what Nando's they're going to meet up for at the Westfield Shopping Centre rather than the game. It's absolute solace. So it feels like that's one of the clubs where not having the fans has helped them. But yeah, just a little bit on our former manager.
Yeah, I think you can't really argue with the current league form, can you? I mean, the team I still think is average at best, albeit they've got a couple of decent players in there that are doing well. He hasn't, in his first spell, it was he wasn't the most popular towards the end, which you can kind of understand, but he's come back, he's had a second bite of the cherry, and he's done pretty well. I don't think you can really argue with what they've done there. I think you're right. I think sometimes, West Ham fans notoriously do get on the team's back a little bit. So I think it's kind of maybe afforded the team the luxury of kind of settling into the season and finding their feet without that added pressure. And they've kind of gone a little bit unnoticed, really, gone on a decent run of form and find themselves in a healthy league position. So I don't think you can argue with that. Okay, is the football there sometimes? Then maybe that leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think at the moment, if you're a West Ham fan, surely you've got to be happy with that.
Yeah, the thought of West Ham in the Champions League next year, eh? Right, so we'll round up the section then. We back over to you, Mark. Bearing in mind last night's result against Sheffield United, and we'll talk about that in more depth going forward in the next part. But has our focus changed now, given that result, Sheffield United? Has the FA Cup just become that little bit more important for the club this year?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure. I think given our success or lack of success getting past the semi-final stage last season, I think there's a little bit of a point to prove in general that we can get at least to beyond the semi-final stage in a cup this year. Obviously, we've matched the League Cup performance already, but I think when I look at the league table this morning, and you think City have got a game in hand over us, could and should go 3 point or 4 points clear with that one, and then you've got us and Leicester on sort of separated by a point, same games played, and then you've got sort of a few teams separated by a couple of points from West Ham down to Everton with some game in hand. I'm not sure. I think you can't you cannot take your eye off the league still for me, even if we accept that, like we said in the last few weeks on the pod, that winning the league remains an outside chance. If we'd have beaten Liverpool, if we hadn't have got beat last night, we'll come on to it shortly, maybe that becomes a little bit more realistic. But the way City have been winning games over in the recently, brilliant run, unbeaten in all competitions for some while, you think they're the ones really who will be clear favourites now. So I think people keep saying Ollie needs to win a trophy. They said the same about Poch when he was at Spurs. Poch needs to win a trophy. I think the same counter argument was so if Poch won a League Cup at Spurs, that would make a big difference to his time at the club. I'm not sure. FA Cup for Man United might be slightly different, bigger trophy, and obviously since Liverpool have won the league and the Champions League in the last couple of seasons, I think they've overtaken us in terms of overall trophy count. So I don't think the FA Cup is big in the sense of if you don't win the FA Cup, you can't buy better players next season. I think Champions League still is a sort of a bigger draw in that sense. But we're Man United and we should be winning trophies. So if you had to choose top four or the FA Cup, I still think you'd put your eggs in top four. I think that's the reality of it. But as I said, if top four is sort of looking quite secure, then why not push for the FA Cup? If you're going to rest players, you might say make sure you put in your strongest team out in the FA Cup. So don't know. We have to see what Ollie's. I think Ollie's team against West Ham will show you how much he wants to win it, I guess.
Okay, top stuff, boys. Love that. Stay tuned for part two, or skip part two, listeners, as we're going to kind of talk about last night's performance at home to Sheffield United.
I just try and, whip the ball in the top corner, really, or in any corner I do. But just hit the target where the keeper ain't.
Welcome back to part two of episode 3 of the Southern Manx 2020-21 podcast series. Second up this week is our review of the Sheffield United game last night. I'm glad I'm laughing now because I wasn't this time last night, or actually it wouldn't been too bad. Half an hour in last night, but yeah, I've calmed down a bit. I was quite emotional, quite frustrated at the game last night, in which we obviously lost 2-1 to bottom of the league, Sheffield United at home. Nick, I'm going to come to you first and talk about the lineup. There was 6 changes from the home win over Liverpool in the FA Cup. All throughout, obviously, keeper at the back, through the spine of the midfield, and in the attacking positions as well. What did Ollie do wrong?
Well, it's almost as if Ollie doesn't listen to this podcast, because how many times have we said stop changing for change's sake? And there was unnecessary change. Look, let's be honest. We all knew De Gea would come back in. That doesn't feel like a change for me. As I said in the last section, the Henderson one's, it's the cup keeper. De Gea was always going to come back in. The Tuanzebe one seemed like a bit of a shock, because from Ollie's comments, it sounded like it was going to be Baye up until the previous day. But what always just bamboozles me about stuff like that is Lindelof's on the bench. If you're fit enough for the bench, you're fit enough to play. Are we now saying Lindelof's back is so bad that he can't play 2 games a week at the age of 25, 26?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was the surprising one, but that was also the one where it was like, I thought we could have managed that a lot better. I can't be too critical of the midfield choice, because that was the 3 that was away at Burnley. And I thought Matic was superb away at Burnley. But last night, he wasn't. I thought he could have done a lot more for the second goal, because he's the defensive midfielder. So that was disappointing. But on paper, and I said it myself, so I don't want to be like a hypocrite, I don't mind that midfield 3. but last night it didn't work. But the biggest one for me now is Martial. If people and viewers and fans, let's just go back from the archive, you'll see that I'm a massive fan of Anthony Martial. The kid's got something, but actually now he's not a kid, and it hasn't gone on especially from last season where he was probably one of our better performers. You can see Cavani's work rate, and you could see how slow that game was last night, and that was one of the reasons. Martial, for all that we're told, is electrifying pace. How often do you see it? How often do you see his electrifying pace? And he certainly doesn't have the work rate to back it up. So the 2 out of the 6 changes, like you mentioned, the 2 that I felt were avoidable, and the change for change sake, as we keep saying on this pod, get the most out of Cavani, because he ain't going to be around much longer. Get the most out of him. If we're not good enough for Plan B, we're not good enough to think about Saturday when you can't beat bottom of the league at home on a Wednesday night. Don't be thinking about Saturday. If you can't beat bottom of the league at home on a Wednesday night, don't be thinking about Saturday. Get every last drop out of Cavani, because he'll leave it on the pitch. And the centre-back one, it feels like we go on like a roller coaster every week on this podcast, the centre-halves. One week we're raving about Eric Bailly, then we don't see him. We rave about Lindelof. He can't play 2 games a week. We put the kid into Nzabi, and he looks like he's got all the attributes in the world, you know. And he wasn't at fault for the loss. It's a collective effort. And the abuse he got on social media was disgusting afterwards. But that was the one for me that could have been avoided. If you're not fit enough to start, you should not be on the bench, because then it just highlights the issue there. So the 2 for me, and I think, Mark, you touched on it when leading into this, was down that spine. Get what you get out of Cavani, and then bring Martial on for the counter and for this electrifying pace that he's supposed to have. He ain't going to work hard against Sheffield United. And then obviously the centre-half, we have an issue there. We have an inconsistency there. And it was highlighted by Sheffield United, who I think before the game had only scored 10 goals. But they come to Old Trafford and get 2. And their second goal, it was like, all right, mate, have another go. Matic ain't around, have another go. So it's easy with hindsight, but there was avoidable changes and there was unavoidable changes. I don't think Ollie's helped himself there.
Yeah, I agree, and that hopefully with that we'll get onto it in a minute about lessons learned. But the goals, I'm going to come to you. Defensive frailties, not just from the defenders, the keeper, maybe a foul. We'll come on to VAR in the shortly. But should we be worried about the goals we conceded last night?
I mean, it's the old adage, isn't it? Any goal that you can see could probably be avoided when you go back and have a look at the footage. I think on first viewing, I didn't think it was a foul. But when there was different angles that were shown, it did look like actually De Gea was nudged in the back. In fact, I think De Gea's is much more of a foul than Maguire's at the other end, if I'm being honest. And I think Chris Sutton on BT Sport hit the nail on the head at the time. If you give one, you've got to give the other, or if you don't give one, you don't give the other. They're very much 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And obviously, it's a bit disappointing when you have VAR that these things are overlooked, because they seem to go over a fine tooth comb for seemingly innocuous decisions. Yet something like that, where there is a goal either scored or prevented, you think they would check all those angles at the time. So from that point of view, it's disappointing. But equally, it's disappointing that De Gea, who we thought was over these kind of things, is not commanding his box, that he can't come out with a fist above the crowd and get rid of that ball. It was obvious what they were doing. They were, they're going to bung the goalkeeper. Maguire and the defenders should be doing much better to protect their goalkeeper. So that's disappointing in terms of that first goal which we've conceded. The second goal was, you're just waiting for that sort of comedy music in the background. It was absolutely dreadful. It was like, just statues everywhere. it was you have so many opportunities to get it right in that passage of play that it becomes embarrassing as a professional. I would be embarrassed to be involved in that period of play. De Gea, why are you not putting it into row Zs? There's no closing down. They literally pick up the ball in our box and pass it 8, 9, 10 yards within our box to a player who then has a chance to control it, get it out of his feet, and have some scuff attempt shot from Burke, which goes in, albeit off a wicked deflection. A joke, a calamity is not a strong enough word to describe that goal, and I found it really hard to fathom and get my head around that, because and if we take it back again further, you've got Matic coming out in sort of, I don't know, some sort of left back position, running out with the ball on his left foot, firing a ball into Martial, which isn't the best of balls, but you'd still expect him to deal with it. Martial falls over, like Bambi's been shot on ice. And then he does his usual, throws his arms up, doesn't really work hard to go, do you know what, this is about the 5th time I've lost the ball in this manner in this match alone. Do you know what, yeah, maybe it was a bit of a bad ball, but let me do something about it. Let me chase back. Let me even take a yellow card or a foul, going back. Again, we find further down the passage of play, lo and behold, who's coming back trying to do something? Bruno's run another 50, 60 yards to try and do something which isn't his job. The whole thing was just disgraceful, really, and I can't get my head around why we seem to go back to doing this passage of play. I was up till midnight. I was furious. If you lose games of football and you're outdone, you're outclassed, you're outplayed, you can do it. But if somebody works harder than you, or you're not doing what you would call the bare minimums as a professional, closing balls down, switched on, not standing there like a flipping snowman, I just don't. I struggle to get my head around that. I really, really do.
Yeah, and I feel your pain. All of my anger has just come out through you there, Nick. Obviously, we touched on a bit of VAR. I don't think we should be reliant upon a referee decision to beat bottom of the table at home. Touched on Bruno working his socks off from a defensive point of view there. When I saw that second goal, I also looked at Martial and Rashford, as both of them guilty as sin from not putting the shift in to help out at the back. Now, does that also tell a bit of a story in terms of our lack of an attacking threat last night? Those two not working hard, not pressing from the front, not adding anything going forward, and obviously Bruno having to do everything himself. When it doesn't come off, we haven't got a plan B. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I thought it was a foul on De Gea, because I sat through that first half thinking the way that Billy Sharp has stumbled into De Gea, maybe a United player has pushed Billy Sharp into De Gea, therefore it's our fault, goal stands. When you see it back, Billy Sharp's pushed De Gea. And I don't care if people think De Gea's weak or whatever, but when you're jumping and you're not on the ground, you don't have a lot of control. So if you get pushed, you get pushed. So that was a foul. In terms of the attacking threat, we're very much set up at the moment to be that pacey, counter-attacking, soak up the pressure, hit them on the break kind of football. We tried it against Liverpool once or twice. It comes off in the cup game. Didn't quite come off in the away game. I think I mentioned it last week. Where it was perfect is the 2 Everton away games this year. If you actually look at it, how we're set up. The problem we're starting to have now, and it happened a little bit towards the back end of last season, Bruno can't do it all. So when it doesn't come off, Bruno actually looks like a distinctly average footballer, and he's not. He's our best player, or he's our most effective player. But he's always trying the killer ball, or the thing that's gonna play between the lines. When it doesn't come off, it looks as though he gives away possession a lot, and it's who else can take responsibility, and that's what I always look at, because when De Gea was getting all those player of the years, good for De Gea. but why is he getting the Player of the Years? Who else can step up? And at that era, it was Smaldini or Jones, or Darmian or Blind or whatever it was. And this is the problem now with Bruno is so key to us. It sounds good when you say when Bruno plays well, United play well. He makes us tick. All of those buzzwords you hear on any football show over the weekend. But what happens when you put that in reverse? What happens when Bruno doesn't play well? You get what happened last night. Because Martial couldn't step up. Because Greenwood scuffed his chance, which was a Bruno through ball. Because Rashford didn't put it in on that second goal. Because Pogba was ineffectual. Because Matic left his legs at home. And that's more of the worry. Bruno will come good. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets the winner at the Emirates at the weekend. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. But I'd rather be surprised by Martial getting a hat-trick and getting a 10 out of 10 performance, or Rashford, or Greenwood, or Cavani starting, which would be nice, or Pogba, or Fred, or McTominay. I'd rather have that surprise, similar to when we played Leeds at home. He was blown away by McTominay's performance, chipped in with a couple of goals. So for me, it's nice hearing you've got a player that, when he plays well, United player, he makes it tick. Everything goes through him. What happens when it doesn't? And that's what we saw last night. That's what we saw. The one killer ball from Bruno was for De Greenwood, and he sort of snatched it. That would have made it 1-1. Who knows what would have happened then? Maybe we would have still got the slab head corner. The goal could have been 2-1. It's all fine margins, but that was the worry for me. This happened back in the last season. Bruno running socks off, and back in the last season, he ran out of gas. I don't want the same thing to happen again. And that was my worry. When Bruno doesn't play well, who does? And the answer last night was absolutely nobody.
Yeah, well, hopefully the likes of Rashford. I mean, Rashford's been pretty good, pretty consistent this season. He obviously didn't have a great game last night. Like you say, Greenwood had his chance. Hopefully we can put it right in the next one. Just going to come back to you for sort of final thoughts, summary. What could Ollie have done during the game to change the outcome? What would you want him to see him do differently when posed with a similar issue, a similar problem in the future?
Yeah, I mean, just to summarise, I didn't have any issues with the starting 11 when I first saw it. It'd be easy to go back now and say he could have done this, he could have done that. I think playing Sheffield United at home, bottom of the league, they've had a terrible season. They've been very, very ineffectual. I think they had something like only 4 or 5 subs on it, but couldn't even fill their full allocation of subs or something like that. I mean, so of course they've come into the game with absolutely no expectations, no pressure whatsoever. So that adds an element to it that they can go there without the shackles. But the team we had out should be more than enough to win that football match at the end of the day. I think it comes back to, and it shows what we are. This is the team we are. This is where we're at in terms of this side's progression, really. And I think, and I said it previously, we have flattered to deceive quite a bit. We are probably in a position where we perhaps not deserve to be, but maybe it's more of a reflection of other teams and what's been going on rather than how well that we've done. And I think we could have potentially, rode this wave a bit more to maybe propel us towards a much more of a stronger title challenge, which we still may well do, but I'm not convinced. The problem for me, and I think Nick kind of touches on it, is that when Bruno doesn't play well, who else does? For me, it's still very, very worrying the distinct lack of width that we have in these kind of games. A team like Sheffield United, when we've got no width, you're basically allowing them to defend compact. They're defending the line of the 18-yard box. Their midfield is very narrow. It makes it so much easier for teams to defend like this because we cannot penetrate the wide areas to get crosses in, to stretch teams. We don't go from left to right, from right to left. We don't take balls to the byline with overlapping runs from fullbacks and wingers. So if you don't have anything coming through the middle that is creative, you're stuck. And we had that in the last couple of weeks with Shaw, and he done really, really well. Obviously, was absent in this game in for Telles. Telles, I still think, is finding his feet, not quite perhaps the the penetration with the runs that Shaw has. I think his delivery is not too bad, Telles, but it doesn't seem to run at defenders. Wan-Bissaka seems to be basically the prodigal son of Antonio Valencia, can only just smash balls along the floor, can't lift the ball in the air for a cross. So you're basically hampered. You don't attack on the right-hand side. Rashford and Martial, when they go wide, they've got a face on them, don't seemingly wanting to be there. There's not a lot of penetration. And I think Rashford's done well, but I think also his numbers again have flattered him a little bit. I think when you look at his numbers in terms of goals and assists, I think the assist thing sometimes I'll take with a pinch of salt, because in the modern game, an assist is essentially the pass before a goal. I think to me, there's a difference between an assist and the pass before the last goal. If you're assisting somebody with a clever bit of play, a little through ball, a little dink through to create a chance, to me, that's an assist in the traditional sense. The last pass, I think sometimes, gives an unfair reflection of a player's performance. But for me, I think these are still areas of the team that need to improve, and this is going to be through personnel stuff that we need to address. We need to have a plan B, and I think me being a traditionalist with United, I've always enjoyed our wide players. We've always had width. We've always had exciting wide players, and I know the game has changed in the last few years, but we don't have anything in that mould at the moment, and I think that's something we need, because when it doesn't work, it just looks really flat, and we find it really hard to do anything to break these teams down. So I'd like to see Ollie, perhaps maybe, whether it's dipping into the transfer market, maybe, forcing, or, I'd much rather see Wan-Bissaka going forward, making mistakes, attempting crosses, trying to beat somebody, and maybe making a mistake now and then, just so that we have that element to our attack. But we literally just have no right-hand side. We have no right-hand side. So it's so anyone with any ounce of tactical knowledge can defend very easily. And I think that's why we've had such trouble breaking teams down. We're a counter-attacking team. It works well for us when we can play on the back foot almost. We're not set up. We don't have the ability to really break teams down. So a long way of saying that, yeah, we need a bit more, really.
Yeah, so maybe obviously we have made a signing, Amid Diallo from Atalanta. He apparently is a right winger and is mustard. So let's see if he gets any game time the rest of the season. Hopefully we can put Sheffield United behind us in our next fixture.
One last thing as well, Mark. I think this one thing with Ollie, it goes back to, is that an area of weakness, his substitutions. Of the front players that should have been substituted, for me, and I don't know whether you guys would agree with this, and feel free not to, but Greenwood would have been the one that I wouldn't have substituted in that game. I think, again, he's the most natural finisher. I think he was pretty productive in that game. Okay, missed one or two chances, but he was doing quite well. Rashford and Martial, neither of those offered anything. I think Cavani had been warming up since about the 17th minute on the sidelines, and it took him about another 3 hours to get on the pitch. It was clear that he was dying to get on. I don't know whether Ollie was making a point of that. DVD comes on in about the 83rd minute, Luke Shaw in about the 84th. I don't quite comprehend the thinking behind those subs. And also, if you look back, the three players he subbed were the three players that he brought in: Tuanzebe, Greenwood, and I've forgotten the last one now, but they were the three, and Telles. They were the three players that. So, is that sending a message to those players? I know you could say Telles one was tactical, but is that giving a confidence boost to those players? I don't know.
Well, I think you could say I thought Martial got nobbled early on, and I thought he kind of hid from then on. I thought he doesn't look up for it. He had some kind of shoulder injury. I think Chris Sutton told him to get on with it. But you think he's playing up against 38-year-old Phil Jagielka. This should be a game that he really takes by the scruff of the neck, and he didn't. And I thought that was quite obvious. And that's the main criticism of Ollie. I get the style of play, the counter-attack, because we've got pace. That makes sense. You play through Bruno. That makes sense. But when things aren't going right, the substitutes needs to make those decisions earlier. Like you say, Cavani could have been the difference. I mean, when he came on, he didn't do much. But if we introduced him a bit earlier, I thought at half time it was crying out for change, and he dithered, and he took too long to influence it, and by that time it was dead. The game was dead. I mean, we can argue we got it back to 1-1, but I don't think we ever really looked like winning the game. So yeah, two things for us to take forward. And like we've always said, hopefully Ollie will learn. We're not the finished article yet, and that's the only kind of saving grace I took from the game. Is it's not like anyone believes that we should win the league this season and we've blown it. It's more we were up there, we're fighting, we're still in the race, but we'll probably fall short, and that's okay, as long as the other sort of targets are met. So yeah, we'll get on to the Arsenal game, where hopefully we'll put this right in the next section.
I'm not going to sit here and be negative about a man that gave me the chance to play for my boyhood team, that I'd always dreamt of playing for.
Hi guys, welcome back to part 3 of the Southern Manx podcast, by the fans, for the fans. In this section, we're going to be looking forward to the weekend's fixture against Arsenal. Marquee fixture in the Premier League calendar, of course. Perhaps maybe not as glamorous as it once was, with these two teams often disputing first and second position in the league. But based upon the way that things are at the moment with regards to the form, United overall doing pretty well, obviously, despite yesterday's result, and Arsenal having a recent surge, with a bit of an improvement in their results. How do you see this one panning out, Mark? And have you got an inclination or a feeling as to how you think maybe the lineups would go for either side, sort of the approach that each manager will take?
Yeah, so thinking about United, obviously we need a reaction after the defeat last night. I think we've all discussed in the previous section around too many changes. So yeah, I'd like to see us get back on track, and I think that we need to go back a little bit to what worked well, a combination of the two Liverpool games, I think. So thinking about the first game, we were pretty solid at Anfield, I thought. So I'd like to go back to some sort of similar shades from that game. I think our away form, I think one more game beats our best ever record away from home. So as in avoid defeat. We're currently unbeaten in the league as well, obviously, this season. So yeah, I'd like to go. My predicted team, or the team I'd like to see, obviously De Gea would keep his place. I think I wouldn't drop him for last night. I think he still made a good save from Billy Sharp at 0-0 with his feet. So I don't think he's in terrible form. Then obviously back four kind of picks itself really. So obviously Wan-Bissaka right back, Shaw left back. Obviously Maguire plays, and hopefully Lindelof can manage. Get himself off the sick bed. Hopefully his back isn't too bad and he can slot back in. I know Bailly wasn't risked last night. I think apparently some kind of bruising during training. Like Nick said, you see in one game, you don't the next. So hopefully, if Lindelof isn't up to it, get him in. Not that Tuanzebe doesn't deserve a chance. I think he looked a little rusty last night, and this is a big game, so I would want one of the Premier centre-backs coming back in. In terms of shape, in terms of the midfield, I think you need McFred back in there. You need him for their energy. You need him for their pressing that you just don't get from the other midfield players. I like that combination. So whether that's in a diamond or whether that's 4-2-3-1 with McFred and then Pogba out on the right, either's fine for me. I know the diamond didn't work against Arsenal in the first game, so might be something to think about. Obviously, Bruno plays in his roaming role, and then hopefully with the protection of McFred, that gives him a bit more license and hit for him and both Pogba to create, and that that attacking threat is there. And then in terms of the strikers, if we're going to go for a 2 or a centre forward and a left wing, if Pogba's on the right, I'd like to see Cavani start. I think he'd be a menace. Almost like our last trip to London at Fulham. I thought he was excellent against Fulham, so I'd like to see a bit of a repeat of that. And then Martial would be lucky to get on the bench for me after his showing last night. Rashford's not far off it, so it's a toss-up between Rashford and Greenwood probably for their last spot. Obviously, big chance for Greenwood last night, which he fluffed. So maybe Rashford just edges it. That's the lineup. That's what I would want to see. I'm not sure any other options really that changes that. I don't think anyone done enough. Likes of Donny and Tellez, I don't think they've done enough to break into that. Maybe there's a bit of a wild card selection in Jala. I know there's been a lot of Twitter activity about when he'll be put into the squad. That feels unlikely. So yeah, that's what I want to see against Arsenal.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. I can see a team very, very similar to that. I think the goalkeeper and the back four, like you said, more or less pick itself. I think McFred is highly likely, and I suppose it's whether Ollie still wants to stick with finding a place for Pogba in the side alongside Fernandes. So, like I said, probably be out on the left or the right, and then it would be a case of is it Rashford, is it Greenwood on in the wide area, and is it Martial or Cavani up front? I think those are probably the questions that are going to be answered when we see the selection at the weekend. For you, Nick, we've got the halfway mark now at the season. Or just over the halfway mark, I should say. How would you describe both Ollie and Mikel in terms of, would you say this is a success or a failure up until this point? Do you think Arsenal should be or could be satisfied with the way that Arsenal are performing in the league, and likewise with United?
No, neither club, given its history and traditions, can say this is their most successful spell in their respective clubs' history. I'm a believer of you can't really judge it until it's over, because football is very short-termist at the moment. I still think Jose's period at United was relatively successful. 2 trophies, second place finish. If we was to say, would you finish second this season, you'd probably take it. If we was to say, would you take a Europa League and a League Cup, even though we're out of League Cup, you'd probably take it. So I'm a big believer is you can't really judge it until it's done. Arteta got himself some time for the FA Cup win, and I think people could kind of see a corner being turned. The links to Pep were inevitable. I was almost going to do a Kim Jong-il from Team America, inevitable. Is a word I struggle with, but they were inevitable, and it just didn't happen for one way or another this season. And I'll come back to that in a second. For us, Ollie has got to 4 semi-finals. There's probably loads of clubs out there that would like to get to 4 semi-finals, but we are Man United, and we don't just expect to get to the final, we expect to win it. So I think Ollie will be judged on if he does win silverware, which Mark was alluding to at the sort of beginning of the show. That is the nature of the beast in football. You're successful if you win things. You're unsuccessful if you don't at the big clubs. The only other way you can be considered a success without winning something is if you're someone like Sam Allardyce, whose success is keeping clubs in the league. So it's hard to say either's been a success or a failure until it's over, I think. Right now, I'm happier than an Arsenal fan, I imagine. And Arsenal fans, if you watch this, please tell me if I'm wrong, if you're happy with where you are compared to where we are. But I don't think you can judge it until it's finished. The one thing that is annoying for us is Arteta's got a trophy in his cabinet and we haven't. But football's so short-termist, I'd rather be where we are now than where Arsenal are. So you can't gauge it, I don't think, until it comes to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit there, which is, what are gauges of success? Where does the barometer of success lie? Is it, is it trophies? Is it progress? Different for different fan bases, and I suppose transitions between managers and teams, which kind of leads me onto the next question, Mark, which is a lot is spoken today about styles of football and another buzzword, philosophies. Arteta very much wants to try and employ his, and Ollie seems to be establishing his philosophy. Do you think that each manager's current philosophy fits in with the club ethos? So do you think Arteta's style is in keeping with the Arsenal style, perhaps, or more modern style, should I say, sort of Wenger onwards? And do you think Ollie's is also in keeping with what you might say is a traditional United philosophy and way of playing?
I think both managers have come into clubs that have had some terrible recruitment in recent years. There's a lot of dead wood that needs to be cleared. So you think obviously at United, who have left the books since Ollie's come in, the likes of Smalling, the likes of obviously Sanchez was a terrible signing, maybe the worst of recent times. I could go on. There's still players at the club that need to leave. People like Rojo, not adding anything. When was the last time you saw Phil Jones? Bless him. I think he's been asked if he wants a testimonial. I think he said only his mum and dad have come. So, you know what I mean? We're talking about at United, there's an Arsenal. He's working his way through it, Arteta. I think his recruitment since he's been there, we're talking about Thomas Partey and Magallanes, Gabriel Meg at the centre half. I think there are two players that he needed to sign to strengthen immediately, and I think he has. You can see obviously the Özil issue has now been resolved with him leaving the club. A couple of the other jokers that they've got there, like the Greek centre back Socrates, I think he's dreadful. I think he's now left or he's in forced of leaving. There's a few others like that, Mustafi as well. When you looked at that Arsenal team recently, I was chuckling to myself, and not because I'm against Arsenal, or my friends support Arsenal, as you know. But I looked at that man for man in that team and I thought, that's not an Arsenal team. But when you took out some of the new signings and you're talking about the likes of David Luiz and Willian and Xhaka and players like, can only turn up for 1 or 2 games a season, you think that's not the Arsenal that we used to battle with in the 90s, that were always knocking at our door. So yeah, on philosophy, I think Arteta, you can see obviously he's been working with Pep for a while. Naturally, there'll be some bits that he would have learnt from him along the way. I think it's a very Arsenal appointment, in terms of Arteta will want to play a certain way, and I think he's doing a good job down there. Like Nick just said, you only get judged of it at sort of the end of it, and we'll get on to Chelsea shortly. But Arsenal seem to be happy with sort of the direction, and there's a bit of a longer term approach. Give him some time to get some signings that he wants in. Recent, obviously, brought in Odegaard now, and they've even sort of upgraded the backup keeper. So I think he's quietly going about his business well. Obviously, dropping out the FA Cup that he won last season will be a blow, but I think he'll be given time at Arsenal to put his philosophy and his stamp on the club. I think he just needs to stay true to it. So, as I said just off air there, we were talking about recently about they need to cross the ball more. Now, I don't look at that Arsenal squad and see, a Carsten Janker, a centre forward that you can put lots of crosses into, and he's your target man. He'll get, 15 headers a season. I don't see that.
Olivier Giroud.
Or Olivier Giroud, yeah, maybe re-sign him. But if you ask Chelsea fans, they'll pack his bags. They'll get rid of Giroud. They hate him. Don't know why. I think he's good. Keep Giroud, Chelsea. But yeah, Ollie clearly is your counter attack. Again, the players he signed have improved Man United. Similar with Arteta, they're both finding their feet really as managers, and they'll make mistakes. I think I'm kind of going back with Nick's answer. I think that was very good. You'll judge them at sort of the end of their tenure at the club, whether their philosophy has worked or not. And that'll be, in terms of trophies, in terms of finishes in the league. So time will tell. But I'd say both clubs will be pretty happy with the progress that both managers have made in their respective time at the clubs.
Yeah, I think both managers by the end of their tenures, obviously it's easy to say now, but I think they can, if it were to end now or by the end of the season, I think they can both argue that they would have left the club in a better state than when they found it. Got rid of some dead wood, put in a philosophy or a style of football, even if it's not one that you would necessarily agree with as a fan, but there's some identity there in that way. So I think they could argue that they would have put it in a better position than when they found it. In terms of looking back, again, it's a marquee signing, one that's a standout fixture in the Premier League, domestically and internationally, one that brings in a lot of figures. I know, Nick, this is a particular fixture which you hold dear yourself. Do you have any particular standout memories, incidents, or fixtures over the years that you like to look of, or that you look back on fondly?
Loads. I mean, this was the game growing up. This was the game. I know this might typify our title of our podcast, Southern Manx, because I know that people go, you always look to the City game or the Liverpool game when the fixtures come out. I looked for the Arsenal game. Growing up, this was the game. The battles, the Keane, the Vieira, Pizzagate, tunnel incidents. This was the game. I wore this top deliberately tonight. Robin van Persie, guard of honour from Arsenal. You know what I mean? Fantastic. This was the game. So I've got loads of memories, good and bad. Bad first, 2005 Cup final in the pouring rain. We've lost the FA Cup. Arsenal haven't even had a shot on goal. We've lost the FA Cup. Don't know how that happened. But
was that the Vieira's last kick of the ball for Arsenal?
Yeah.
And then he left, didn't he? Yeah, that was funny. I've never outplayed a team so much in a game in my life. That was
disgusting. I got so drunk that night as well. But the thing is, my favourite memories for this game, and this is my favourite game in football, bar none. 4-2 away at Highbury. Tunnel incident. Roy Keane has won that game in the tunnel. Right? You want to pick on Gary Neville? You can't pick on me like that. 4-2. Rooney winding up Pires. I still don't know what this means, but he's done it to him. Sorry if I'm offending any French people watching, but I generally don't know what it means. But Rooney doing it. Ronaldo, couple of goals. Silvestre, calmest man in football, headbutting Freddie Ljungberg. You know what I mean? And then who can forget the John O'Shea chip?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So absolute favourite game in football, bar none. It'll take a lot to top that for me. And I think why I look back on that game so fondly is how strong was the Premier League that time. You look at the lineups: Rooney, Ronaldo, Keane, Scholes, Giggs, Ferdinand. You look at Arsenal: Ljungberg, Bergkamp, Henry, Vieira, Campbell. You look at those lineups. Neither of those two won the league that year. Chelsea won the league. So look at Chelsea's lineup. You got Liverpool back in them days as well. Torres, Mascherano, Gerrard. How strong was the Premier League back then? So that's my favourite game in football, bar none, the tunnel game. But so many other games. It will be easy to sit here and gloat in the 6-1 Dwight York hat trick. You're back, Dwight. You're back. 8-2 Ashley Young. We thought we had a well beater on our hands. So many memories. Arsenal probably got a few as well. Pizzagate and things like that. But you asked the question. Special memories. 4-2 under the lights away at Highbury. Everything that went with that, fantastic. That was the peak of my fandom of football. So that this fixture and that game in particular will always hold a special sort of moment for me.
Yeah, I think that I remember that standout fixture as well, because to me it felt like that was the moment that sort of Ronaldo became a man in the Premier League. I remember early on in the game him squaring up to Henry, barely phased, and then later going on to score and giving it the shh as well. I think it was a really important win for us at the time, because like I said, we were in that kind of transitional period as well then. So I think that was a really key fixture for us, and it went on to great things again in the following few seasons after that. You, Mark, have you got any sort of standout good, bad and ugly fixtures from the United versus Arsenal back catalogue?
Yeah, well, as Nick was talking, I'm professional, so I write my notes down. And it was 4-2 at Highbury. He's mentioned that one. Cross that out. 6-1 at Old Trafford, cross that one out. 8-2 at Old Trafford, cross that one out. He didn't mention FA Cup semi-final in '99. Clearly, the Ryan Giggs mental dribble and shoot in the top corner or the roof of the net past Seaman, brilliant goal. After Schmeichel saved the penalty as well, and we were down to 10 men. Got to remember that. Great character, typified us that season, that game. Yeah. There was also a game in the Champions League actually, which was quite unusual to meet a domestic rival in the Champions League. I always find that quite interesting. That again down at Emirates actually, where Ronaldo scored a free kick from, it felt like the touchline near the halfway line against Almunia. You remember that? At his sort of near post. So yeah, some great memories. Arsenal's a funny one because I always find growing up in the 90s, watching the battles that we used to have, there did feel like a decent amount of respect there. It felt like, particularly Ferguson and Wenger obviously become great friends through the rivalry. But some battles among men, real battles. Keane, like you said, Vieira, Bergkamp, he was nasty. You had when Van Nistelrooy got sort of bullied at Old Trafford, Martin Keown jumping all over him. Just, there's some great memories all throughout the years. Do I think Saturday's game or this weekend's game is going to be another classic like that? Probably not. I'd take a 1-0 at this stage. Bruno, last minute free kick or off the referee's backside at this rate. I mean, the point is we need to get back to winning. But yeah, there's so many others that we could talk about, classic games. But they'd be my pick.
Yeah, no, some great picks there. And I think, Sky Sports are doing a montage as we speak of these games that they probably rerun every season, and they'll talk about it. But for me, quickly, I think the bad ones was Arsenal winning the league at Old Trafford with Will Tour. That was a painful one. And I think, certainly Nick mentioned the game at Highbury in the black kit that we won. That one for me is a standout fixture. I think those would be, if I had to pick one of each, those would be mine. And from the past we move now into the future, seemingly, and looking ahead to the weekend's fixture. So Nick, bearing in mind all the things that we've spoken about, how do you see this panning out? Have you got an idea of how you think it's going to be in terms of the final score?
Yeah, before I give my prediction, one game just really popped into my head away from home as well. Roy Keane double 2-1, the first ever Sky Digital interactive red button game. Just popped into my head. He got both goals.
Was that the follow the player thing they used to do?
Yeah, in the weird blue flannel kit. That was,
I hate that kit.
But Keano got 2. But yeah, sorry. Prediction. I'm with Mark here. I would, after what we saw last night, take a 1-0, and because Arsenal have changed their style and they tend to play quite slow as well, this might not be the most exciting of games. I hate to say, for my favourite fixture, but I want to think positively. I've been looking forward to discussing this with you boys all week, so I don't want to think negatively. So I'm going to go a United win. I think this might be heart rule in my head, but yeah, maybe a 1-0 United. Maybe we need to get back to keeping clean sheets. So a 1-0 United.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm thinking more with my head than my heart with this one. I think this has got I think the first game at Old Trafford had 0-0 written all over it. Then Pogba gave away a clumsy penalty and gave them the win. I think this could be a 0-0 washout. I'm really sorry to give that sort of prediction, and rather than build up the game at like at Anfield, but I just think this has got a draw written all over it. So yeah, whether that's 0-0, 1-1, but yeah, I'm going draw.
Okay, so I to summarise and finish off, I think it was going to be a tight game as well. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. I think it's going to be a bit ponderous. I think teams are going to cancel themselves out a little bit there. Really, I'd like to think that if there is an early goal in the game, it can open it up. But I see it as a 1-1, not too exciting. Not to be. That's just me being honest. I don't want that to be the case, but that's how I see it at the moment. But I'm hoping that Nick's right and that me and Mark are wrong, and that we do get the 3 points and that we can kick on from there, basically. So that's the end of part 3, and us looking back as well as looking forward to the Arsenal fixture this weekend. Hopefully we get the 3 points.
And of course, walking out here now on a Manchester United night bring all the memories back?
Yeah, I think that's what's special about tonight. You know, I've waited 4 years, and this is the first time I've been back here when it's been full of Man United fans, and I think that for me is...
Okay, welcome back. Part 4 of the Southern Manx podcast, by the fans, for the fans. This was one of my favourite sections of the show when we was doing this a few years back, because we kind of come away from Man United now and look at all things Premier League, but with the games coming so thick and fast, it's been difficult to do that in recent podcasts, but there's been some big news this week. So we're going to try and round this up as quick as possible. Some quick fire here. So Orlando, I'll come to you. In the breaking news this last hour, Jesse Lingard moved on loan, initially on loan to West Ham. We triggered his extension, so he is actually contracted to us until the end of next season, but is this the end of his United career? Is there any way back?
Yeah, I think so. Is that how you do it? The J Lings thing? I don't know. I'm not down with the kids or whatever. I don't know how you do that sort of vibe.
Can't tell them tried it.
It's like up there with that thing, isn't it? Like the old. I think it is, isn't it? Really, hasn't really featured very much at all this season in any of the competitions. So it's hard to see a way back in. Who's he going to come in for? He's not going to come in for Bruno. He's not going to come in for Pogba. He's not going to come in one of the wide areas. It's hard to see where he fits in with this current United side, really. Was always the player that Fergie bigged up. You know, in a few years, it will be mustard. In a few years, he'll be mustard. And then for a bit under Jose, he did turn into Messi Lingard, wasn't it? Scored some absolute cracking goals. For me, what he brought to the table was a good performance. For a season or so in between that kind of transition between Van Gaal and Jose, obviously the cup finals as well. So I think he did well in that transitional period. You know, good pal to Rashford, probably helped him integrate into the first team squad. But I think his time is up. It's been well served, and hopefully he can move on to bigger and better things. Because I think he's seen as a little bit of a clown, bit of a maybe a nuisance sometimes, and I think perhaps deserves a bit better than that, really. And hopefully the next move will maybe give him a bit of credit back as a professional.
Yeah, I mean, the noises coming out of the club was that they wanted to do the best thing for Jesse Lingard. It wasn't a case of get out of the club. So you know, the best move. So a former manager in Moisey and West Ham. I guess it's hard to gauge what happens in the summer because he needs to do his bit as well and do well. But also the going rate for transfers, there's not a lot of money around. So whatever you thought Jesse Lingard was worth, he isn't worth that now. And United are traditionally not good at recouping money. So it's a big few months for Jesse and for West Ham with where they are, and potentially United in terms of how much we actually get for him, because this has got a £500,000 bid from Fulham written all over it if it doesn't go well, and we'll probably accept it. Okay, so that's Jesse Lingard. We wish him the best. As O said there, the cup final goal when we're down to 10 men will always be magical. You know, a goal in the League Cup final, goal in the Charity Shield, a great season under Jose as well in that first spell. So we wish him well. It seems mad that not so long ago that him and Dele Alli were England World Cup regulars, but I guess that's football. Massive news in the Premier League. Probably everyone saw it coming. Sum up Frank Lampard's departure at Chelsea. Did you see it coming? Are you shocked?
I haven't been following Chelsea every game this season. I've seen the odd bits and pieces. I tuned into the last 20 minutes, I think, of the Leicester defeat, and I saw no fight. I saw the body language from the players, not interested, not running back. I mean, we slated Martial and Rashford last night, but just looking at the Chelsea players, who some of the new signings that should be making an impact, players like Ziyech, some of the more experienced players through the spine as well. So, did we see it coming? I thought Chelsea would have a little bit more class than that. I thought they would, as it's a legend of their club. You know, this isn't just another Sarri, journeyman manager like Rafa Benitez. This is a legend of the club. I thought that they might give him until top four was mathematically out of reach, or they've crashed out the cups. But for them to have won the group in the Champions League, top four still within reach, in the FA Cup, I thought to go now, unless they've seen something behind closed doors, which they're not convinced that he can change. And that's the problem when you're an inexperienced manager. When you hit a bump in the road, you haven't got a CV to look at. You haven't got a solution a lot of the time. It's learning on the job, a little bit like Ollie is. And I guess some clubs will give you that time to make mistakes and learn and grow, and some clubs won't. Obviously, he had last season. They overachieved with the transfer ban. He got the best out of a lot of the younger players, the likes of Mount and Abraham and Reece James. And obviously, they spent 200 plus million this summer. On the surface of it, sounds like he wasn't able to manage that squad and get the best out of them players, and coach and work out what his best team is, and put that all together in what you expect from a manager at the highest level. And on paper, you have the choice out of him and someone with a proven track record like Tuchel available. What are Chelsea going to do? There's only going to be one decision when they're sitting in mid-table, and the Romans spent that money. They're not going to wait. So, yeah, it surprises me in a way because it's not just another manager, but doesn't surprise me in another way because, this is Chelsea.
Yeah, and this has been a real brain teaser over the last couple of days, because you hear about this season when pundits describe why teams are either doing good or bad, and they sum it up because it's this season. Everyone calls it, this is a weird season, this is a crazy season. But it's only as crazy as you make it. And there's the old saying of it's not the cards you're dealt, it's how you play your cards. And I just think everyone from top to bottom at Chelsea probably hasn't played their cards well here, and Frank Lampard's paid the ultimate price. So, did he overachieve last year? I always thought Chelsea were going to do well, create a siege mentality. It's not as if people didn't know about these kids. Everyone knew about Hudson-Odoi. Everyone knew about Abraham. Everyone knew about James. The centre half was probably a surprise, and he's now on loan at Milan. Then you look at the 200 million, which seems to be, oh yeah, but he spent 200 million. That's why he got sacked. Did he spend it? Doesn't sound like they were his signings. So I don't think the board's covered themselves in glory, or the director of football, whatever it is. But then I completely agree with your point of, did he actually know what his best 11 was? It seems he couldn't find a centre-half partnership. Couldn't figure out his Chelsea wingers. And I say Chelsea wingers because Mourinho made Chelsea wingers. That's what they became famous for. Couldn't figure them out. Couldn't figure out his number 9. Then you started getting criticism of the midfield. Kante, who's been the best Premier League midfielder for a number of years. So it just doesn't feel like anyone at Chelsea's covered themselves with glory here. But ultimately, Frank's paid the price, and we'll see what Thomas Tuchel brings to the table. Orlando United, old boy, former skipper, lifted numerous Premier League trophies, FA Cups. Stevie Bruce, he's under pressure at Newcastle. What do you make of that situation, mate? I mean, it feels like the real-life Harchester United up there from Dream Team. There's always something going on at Newcastle.
I've got a few friends of mine who are Newcastle fans I see on Twitter, and the feedback pretty much from day dot is everything is very negative around the club, whether it's Mike Ashley, whether it's Steve Bruce. But I think if you strip that all back to what it fundamentally is, Newcastle are a championship side with a championship manager at the end of the day. If you go through the squads, you know, I don't know who sanctioned that Joel Linton deal for 40 million euros, but give that man a pay rise. You know, get his agent, whoever he is, because even at the time, I think he had like 8 or 9 or 10 like Bundesliga goals. It was hardly, you know, something that was setting the world alight. Almiron, another one, you know, he's all right. Again, I think he's a mid-table, maybe top 6, top 8 championship player. I think if you go through the team, it's a championship side. Steve Bruce is a championship manager. I think they are where they are because that's what they are. And I think, you know, the fan base always dictates that they want to do more. Can Steve Bruce do any better than that? I don't know. Maybe if he was given a better job with some better players, we might be able to see something different. But I think maybe managers do get a little bit typecast. And I think sometimes, certainly with British managers of a certain age, they do kind of get typecast a little bit. And I don't think they'll ever be given the opportunity to break the mould. I think that's just the narrative that they play up to. You know, Big Sam, you know, he'll never be considered for a top 6, top 7 job. Certainly not after Everton. He'll always be the man you get in. It's almost as if he's just sat chilling at the job centre waiting for someone to get sacked so he can come in and make 5 mil for the season and get done. Yeah, Steve Bruce, the writing's on the wall, isn't it? Surely at some point he will get the bullet and go. I think it's really comes down to what it always is with Newcastle, which is a financial decision basically, and who can they get in, what's going to be the compensation package. I think that's what it boils down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, you said break the mould. I reckon Stevie Bruce has broken a few dessert moulds in his time, hasn't he? But I think with Newcastle and other teams of this ilk, and Palace will have this decision in the summer when Hodgson's contract's up. You look at Leeds. Leeds have come up and they've gone, you know what? We'll lose more games than we win, but we'll stay up because we will win games. And that will be all right for 2 or 3 years until the fans get bored of it. But teams like Newcastle, especially this season, don't give it a go anymore. They don't give it a go. They played a game against another relegation rival the other day and played 5 at the back. At Newcastle, didn't even know they had 5 defenders. They play 5 at the back. And that will always deter. That's why fans get the ump. That's why fans get the ump, because you're not even giving it a go. And that's what it will come down to, because they're just not entertained anymore. Fans can go down, or as long as they can give it a fight. If this goes wrong for Bielsa, they'll still love him. But Steve Bruce will walk out of Newcastle, achieve nothing. They've got to give it a go. Right, and moving on to our final section then, and it's hoping to become a weekly feature for us, and that's just purely because of the amount of people that have started to follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube. Please keep doing that. We really, really appreciate the interaction and the feedback. So Pal, over to you for your weekly social media shout-outs.
Social media roundup. Yeah. Listen, it's been great, and we've been using Twitter to sort of reach out to new people, new listeners, and we always do a weekly sort of thank you for new followers. So far this week, some great interaction. New follower, Halftime Pie. Check them out. Also, MUFC Analytics has been in touch. They do some good stuff on sort of tactical analysis. Might be something that we look at in the future pod. And also, I don't know if you know All Right fans, but we were speaking to them earlier in the week. For Man United fans, in particular, they do an excellent alternative commentary. Really, really funny. Worth checking that out. I don't know if you've heard that, guys. But yeah, also just other new followers was WHF and Manchester Derby. I mean, some of these names on Twitter are quite interesting. We're kind of, as you see, Southern Manx podcast. Keep it quite simple, but no. Remember, like and subscribe, and also give us your comments. As I say, we got some good comments last week. Great work, lads, from MUFC analytics was great to hear. But if there's stuff you want to hear or not, or we're all ears really. But yeah, lots of good interaction again this week.
Okay, that's going to round off our show tonight. Thank you very, very much for listening. It's not always easy talking about a defeat, especially such a poor performance. But I'll tell you what, talking about the Arsenal game, reliving some memories with my mates here. I hope you've really, really enjoyed the show. I've enjoyed recording it. Join us next week when we obviously review the Arsenal game. We've also got Southampton at home, and then we can look forward to Everton at home as well. So, who knows? There's some big games as well with other teams. I think City have got some big games coming up, Spurs, Liverpool, things like that. Lots going on, lots to talk about. As always, like us, subscribe to us, comment on us. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. So from Mark, Orlando and myself, and from JP hiding behind his garage, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
When I first joined Manchester United, when I first stepped into Old Trafford, and I walked to Sir Alex Ferguson's office, and I could smell Sir Matt Busby's pipe through the corridors and in the office.